Alright, another thing I wanted to go over really quick, this is just for the record, just a random Goblin Slayer helmet that I made a while ago, is basically how to terminate edge loops so that I can keep this edge pointed if I want, without having this crease here if I don't want that on something like a rounded surface. So I'm just going to go through, I'm just duplicate this. I already have the edge loops in here, obviously, to smooth this. And you can see I've actually gone through, and I haven't looked at this in a while. I haven't gone through and done a little bit of this down here. But basically, so let's just assume, for example, that we did not have these loops here. This is not the shape of the helmet at all, but maybe I wanted this to be rounded. I don't actually, but for the sake of argument. So we want this point and this round here. So we basically need those loops here to actually hold this edge loop in place. And we have the loops to do it, so what I usually do, and you can see I actually already have it in here, I add this extra little loop here that just sort of follows the edge at the top of this. And what I'm going to go through and do is just grab these three vertices here and merge those puppies to center. What that's going to do, you still have the loops to hold that little shape up here, but you can see that we have this rounded form down here. So this works really nicely for sort of outward points where you have like this nice little diamond. It gets a little bit dicey on areas like this down here. We have a point that's sort of like a V or like coming to a point. Every once in a while, this might not be the best demo object. Apparently it's not. Normally this breaks it worse. So every once in a while, like, I did the same thing I did above, where I put the extra edge loops in, and then I merged to center with all the vertices. And that's a pretty aggressive star there, but sometimes it makes this really strange aggressive pulling. So you need to get a little bit more creative with how you handle that. But again, I'm just going to pretty much go through and just sort of, again, merge all these to the center. In this case, I might do these as well. Sort of assuming I want the entire helmet to be super rounded. So, I mean, that's pretty much usually how I go through. Like, if I need these little hard, crisp edges, but I want like a super rounded, kind of more organic form, that's usually how I do it. I just add in all the loops I need, and then go through and delete the ones that I don't need, that are sort of affecting the shape of the object that I want for the majority of the piece. So I mean, this is like kind of a random example. Another shape I see pretty commonly is something like this on like a sphere. This is not a sphere. This is a cylinder. I'm losing my mind. So what I'm going to do, this is like a shape that pops up pretty commonly on pens. So I'm just going to sort of go through and like recreate this very, very sloppily. So we have this weird sort of, again, pen shape here. It's part of the thing that designs like, it's part of the thing that sort of designs like the clicker and like how that works. So if you're leaving this as a low poly game model, this would be fine, but if you're designing this for animation, it really should be smooth. So what you can do is go through and basically add a bunch of edge loops in here. So we want all of these edges to be hard, pretty much, but we want the bottom of the cylinder to remain cylindery and nice, and not have a bunch of like weird creases in it. So first thing, I have this extra loop here. I'm just going to drag that up. That's going to harden the edge at the bottom of these pieces. And then I will go through and insert edge loops just here and here. That's going to harden the, whatever this weird shape is, make it a little bit less rounded. So I'll just sort of work on both of these at the same time. And that's pretty much like the easiest stuff that you can do. I'll throw in another one of these at the top and just one down here for the sake of, I don't like that being mushy. So it's really, really easy. You can pretty much, if this is just like a regular cylinder and there's no, variation in the object, you can add pretty much as many edge loops as you want horizontally. Just sort of crush stuff down. But in this case, so I mean, this is basically, oh, that's so bad. So this is pretty much as far as we can go without adding loops that are going to affect, like this I want to be this hard little crease here. This is clearly just has some broken, disgusting pulling. So there's a few ways, again, pretty much the same thing I showed you with the Goblin Slayer helmet. I'm just going to go through and add all my loops that I need, that I know I need. So go through 2 loops there, that's going to harden that edge. Add another loop there. And I do need one on the outside of this. Remember, for every edge you want to smooth, you should have 3 loops. So one sort of the base edge of like where officially is the edge. That's the middle one, and then one on the left and one on the right. So that should be good for this one. You can see like it looks pretty much like what we want, except for this horrendous pulling. If I throw in another loop, it should help with that pulling, and it does, hooray! But you can see that now, I mean, this shape is good, this is pretty much what we want, but they have this really ugly faceting here, and this is something you most definitely don't want on your models. Side note, if you're my student, I will take points off for this faceting. So in this case, I'll do the same thing over here again. Just add all the loops that you need, and like that. So we should have basically these two shapes here. So I will duplicate this object because I intended to make two of the same shape. But what we need to do is go through and again keep all these hard edges here, not the hideous faceting. So same thing I did with the Goblin Slayer helmet is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to go through, grab these vertices. Ooh, hello, what am I doing? Grab these vertices, make sure you don't have anything on the back selected, and do a merge to center. And pretty much just do that all the way around this model. So I'll start doing this, and again, I don't really need to worry about these. I could terminate them for the sake of having fewer edge loops, but it doesn't really make a huge difference, honestly, because they're not affecting the curvature of this cylinder at all. So I'll do the same thing. Actually, if you have long loops, what you can do is sort of double-click the edge loops on either side of the original and just sort of delete them. So when you do that, make sure that you do a control delete. If you do a regular delete, you'll notice that these lines are kind of wiggly, and that's because it's left a bunch of vertices on the model, which is insane. To get rid of those, don't be terrified to do this, just marquee select over either the affected area or the whole model, and hit delete while in vertex selection mode. It will get rid of all of them and leave all of the ones attached to things totally fine. So I'll do the same thing here. Again, just grab these guys, and in this case I have like this weird extra loop that's just like hanging out in there. I'll deal with that later. But you can see by doing that, just a little faceting from that weird extra loop, that we maintain this pointy stuff here. And we have, for the most part, again, except for this one area, a nice rounded circle up here. So normally you're going to need to go through and do that pretty much everywhere. And in this case, the sort of extra loopy weirdness is because of this horrendous topology on the top of my sphere, or on the top of my objects. I'm actually just going to get rid of that for now. And then just delete that. Delete this random extra loop. And again, do exactly the same thing up here. So just grab these loops, do a merge to center, and just do that. Don't do that. But continue merging to center, or just, again, double-click on this, and the sort of bordering edge loops, and get rid of those. And you should then have a nice sort of pointy shape on a rounded surface. This gets a little bit more challenging if you're doing it with something like a circle, or like something that's a little bit more complicated than a basic cylinder. But for the most part, this is going to get you what you need. So again, doing the exact same thing on whatever this other shape is that I made. And in this case, I'm just going to go through and sort of merge all of these. Really? Nice. Okay. Just merge all of these to center the exact same way I did before. And I had Isolate Select turned on, and apparently that is just like not having decided to not work with the tool for some reason, which I've never had happen, but whatever. So again, nice round base on the circle, and we have this up here, and I do not want to merge 8,000 edge loops here, so I'm just going to grab those and delete them. But yeah, so I mean that's more or less how you terminate edge loops so that you get sort of nice looking shapes. You can see this certainly looks better than this. And also, a lot of times, if I'm doing something with, like, the top of the cylinder, so I don't end up with this disgusting mess, I'll just delete the inner cap, or the upper cap, and then just sort of add it back in manually. If you're planning ahead, you can do, just extrude that upper edge, and then extrude it again, and just merge to center. What that's going to do is give you that little edge loop right on the center of here, so I don't need to go through and, like, manually add one to smooth it. But again, dramatic improvement going from this to this over here. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you're in my class, This is sort of something that I expect to see going forward on all of your models. It's a good thing to practice. It sucks. It's really boring and it's really tedious, but you gotta know how to do it. So start now and just keep doing that, basically.